Tonight we are going to be making carnitas in our Insta pot. They're almost finished with homemade sourdough discard tortillas and some sauteed vegetables, guac, and corn salsa. So we're gonna roll out our tortillas. We made this dough earlier during our lunch stream, but these are just kind of made with some sourdough discard, flour, oil, salt. It's a nice kind of delicate dough. I'm just gonna give it a nice little thing. We're gonna roll these out into the thinness or thickness that you want. And I need to get a tortilla press because those make those perfect little circles versus mine are more like a square. But they cook up just the same. Look at this. So it's a nice, stretchy, thin dough. So I'm gonna turn on my skillet over here and we're gonna just start getting ready to toast them up. I'm gonna put a little bit of olive oil on the skillet for our toasting. And then we're gonna roll these guys out. So we don't need much because there's actually a bit of oil in our dough to begin with. So I've got my first one right here. Just gonna lay them right here and we can work on our second one. And this dough was super simple to make. It was just a cup of sourdough discard and it with some flour, salt, oil. It's gonna go great with our carnitas that we're having tonight, as well as our corn salsa and guac. So I prepped our carnita meat in my Insta pot so I have it there. It's just pretty much finished up, but I have, I had 3 pork chops that I needed to use plus a half of a pork roast. So we put that in there and then I added some liquid smoke and some smoky chipotle seasoning, a little bit of salsa because I had some salsa left over that I wanted to use up, and then some like Mexican fiesta seasoning and a little bit of broth, and that's what we simmered in it, and 2 bay leaves. But it's gonna be delicious because it's been simmering in that for the last couple of hours. But it was kind of a way, I gotta get rid of these meats. So they'll be perfect for our carnitas. And then we made our tortilla dough earlier. And so we have this lovely tortillas, but I keep telling myself, I need to invest in a tortilla press so I can have perfect little circles and not these crazy ones. I mean, if I took the time to really move it out, I could probably get a perfect circle, but I'm all about speed and efficiency versus looks. It's just gotta taste good, you know what I mean? Okay, we're waiting for our to heat up. I can feel the heat coming off of our skillet. And we're gonna just kind of do a light saute on kind of browning on both sides of the tortilla to crisp it up.
You have a question? Do you make your own salsa?
A lot of times I do make my own salsa. I did for the, I think we have a video posted where I made my own salsa on there. So we do, tonight I'm making a corn salsa, but not a tomato one. So yes, I do make my own salsa plenty of times. Although I am also a big fan of just some good paste, you know. The mild paste is always good. Okay, so we're gonna have this first one kind of toasting up and I'll make my little belt and we'll get our next one. So this is our sourdough discard. It was a cup of sourdough discard. It not active, just ready for, you know, if you needed to feed. And then we mixed it with a 2/3 cup of warm water and a 1/2 cup of oil, about 2 teaspoons of salt, and 3 1/3 cup of flour. And we mixed those together and kneaded them. And they've just been sitting on my counter until dinner time. So they're nice and they have a nice tender dough. It's very easy and soft. Let's get my tongs over here and we're just gonna, there we go, crisp these guys up. The tortillas do not need very long to cook because they're so thin and you don't wanna overcook them to where they're hard and crunchy. So my first one is kind of our test one until the skillet is up and then they all kind of cook on like a medium-high heat. There we go. We're just gonna cook it lightly through. And these will be the tortillas that we're gonna use on our carnitas that we have stewed in our Instapot. It's just a quick way to do it, you know, but it's delicious. For our carnitas, I mainly typically use just like a pork butt roast. So this was, I had half of a pork butt roast in there, but I also had 3 pork chops that we weren't gonna use because we're a family of 7. 3 pork chops isn't gonna feed anybody. So I threw those in there as well, and we'll kind of chop up that meat in with our pork butt, and I had it in there with some salsa, smoky chipotle, a bay leaf, some Mexican Fiesta seasoning, a little bit of liquid smoke, and it's been stewing there. I was thinking about adding a can of beer because sometimes when you marinate in beer, it makes it really tender and adds a good flavor to it. There we go. Turn this down. You can see we've got a little bubbles popping up here when you cook your tortillas. Again, you don't want to overcook them because you don't want them to get crispy. So we're almost done with this one because you still want them a little bit malleable when you're using them. Perfect. You see just a little bit of browning on that side. And I'm going to put them over here. We're going to throw this next one on and let it cook up. Turn my heat down. We're gonna get our little conveyor belt out and move. I like to do a little dusting on my countertop. That way it just doesn't stick to it. If you had a tortilla press, you just put your ball in there and you go, and it would flatten it out. I keep saying, oh, I should get a tortilla press because everyone loves the homemade tortillas. And it is really hard to try to roll out a perfect circle. So we more like have like squares or rectangles. There we go. Let me get my tortilla over here ready to flip. Perfect. We got just a little bit of browning on it. And then let's look at our meat over here. I'm gonna pull it out. I'm gonna get a trivet to put it on, but you can look in there. Some lovely seasonings. And this it smells so good. And I did that on my high pressure on the Instapot for about 2.5 hours. So you don't need it for very long on there. But what I do is I just throw in a pork butt roast with my Mexican seasonings, about 1.5 cups of like a broth and some liquid smoke. That liquid smoke gives it, as if you were to smoke it, just gives a lovely flavor. And it's just super easy. It makes it so tender. It's a nice alternative than doing, say, like a ground beef taco or, you know, chicken or steak cut up. There we go. We'll just roll this guy out. I'm gonna see if I can make this one more of a circle. But with tortillas, your dough shouldn't be stiff. These are flour tortillas. Your corn tortillas, yeah, you need to have a nice malleable dough. Otherwise, they won't like press out well or they'll be too crumbly. Let's flip this guy. He doesn't, perfect. And so you're just kind of browning them to where just a little bit. You don't want to toast them up too much or they'll get hard and crunchy. And you want a nice malleable shell like this. So see how you can kind of bend it? This is how it's gonna be nice and cooked. Okay. We move right over here. We'll let these cook. I'm gonna slide this out of the way and we can start a little bit of prep on some of our vegetables that we're gonna be sauteing up while we wait. So I'm gonna get my onion chopped up. I'm using half of an onion. I used the other half during my lunch today when we made our lentil soup. So I'm gonna use the other half so we don't waste. There we go. We're gonna take off that skin. Let me flip over here. Oh, perfect. Got lovely. Now that one looks like a professional tortilla. Get this guy on. I'll just turn them down a little bit. And now I'm gonna give a quick little thing. So these, since these are gonna be like kind of like a fajita or whatnot, I'm gonna do nice long stringy onions so that they'll be a nice in our things. I'm gonna put a little bit of olive oil in my non-stick frying pan over here. You could use a skillet as well if you want to get that nice good char on it, but non-stick works great. I'm gonna turn that on. I'm gonna add these onions so that they can start to saute up. Let's see if this guy is ready for a flip. Perfect. And we're gonna break these up, get them kind of starting to toss. And so essentially we're gonna have sauteed onions and peppers. So we'll build our little carnitas. So we'll have our little taco, our little fajita with the carnitas, onions, peppers, and then I'm making a corn salsa and some guac to add into it. So it's just gonna be a really delicious like fajita. We've got this guy. Perfect. Let's start on our peppers. So I'm gonna kind of cut, I'm gonna reach in, take out the seeds. Also, fun fact, this is a boy pepper because it has 1, 2, 3. This is a girl, it has 4. So in case you didn't know, peppers have sexes and there's their girl and the boy. Girl peppers are typically sweeter in flavor. So if you're at the store and you're picking out your peppers, the girl ones with the 4 nubs at the bottom are sweeter in taste. There we go. We'll get that guy out and we're gonna do these. We're gonna do, again, nice long strips that we'll be throwing in our fajitas. And I like to just stick with the red, the greens, or the reds, the oranges, and the yellows of the peppers because I find green peppers to be a bit more bitter in taste. And while they are cheaper, they're not as yummy. And we're gonna give these a nice, break them up, let them start to saute. And perfect. Let's see, are you guys ready to flip? Perfect. You see how you got the air bubbling up? It's perfect. Those are what gives you those nice little bubbles on your tortilla. Okay, smush this guy out. And with these, with homemade tortillas, you can roll them out as thin or as thick as you want. I like mine to not be super thin because I do like a good heft to them. You know, I love like when you go to a restaurant and they have homemade tortillas, they're just so good. But you could like literally press them out to be much thinner if that's what you like. Perfect. Look at that lovely, those beautiful bubbles. Put my next guy on. And again, it really doesn't take much work to make homemade tortillas, but it definitely jazzes up just your basic like, fajita or carnita. And it doesn't take much time. Like I think it took us maybe 5-10 minutes max to make the dough earlier. And then we just let it sit on the counter until dinner time, and I'm just rolling them out as we go. And it's things like that that can really elevate your meals at home without like getting expensive ingredients or putting in tons of work. But it just makes it a little bit nicer. Let's get our next pepper. We've got here. So when I cut my peppers, I kind of cut off the top and then I can push out the middle. And then I'm just going to reach in here and grab out those seeds. These are chopped. If your knife is starting to slip on your pepper peel, you need to give it a quick sharpening up. A good sharp knife should cut right through your pepper. You just need to get a honing steel and hone it and just sharpen it up, which most knife sets have a honing steel in it. And it's really not that hard to use. You just kind of go to sharpen it. And it doesn't take much, but a sharp knife will lead to less accidents in the kitchen. You're more likely to cut yourself if you have a dull knife. Throw these peppers in. I'm gonna save a little bit for our salsa, or our corn salsa. guy out. Lovely. I'll give it 1 second while I roll this guy out. Don't want my pan to get too hot. And this one's gonna be a funky. And he ripped. We'll do a little surgery and put them back together. There we go. And I put a little bit more flour on my thing. Give us a quick toss. Okay. I'm cooking my onions and pepper on high heat because I want to get this lovely, like when you go to a restaurant and they have it on a skillet, it gives a nice little sear on it. So I'm wanting to sear them up to kind of give you that still crisp, but the good flavor out. I don't want to have soggy peppers. I want to have crisp peppers in my fajitas that still have a bit of crunch, but aren't raw. They just have been cooked on high heat, so they've been seared. Let's get this guy. And I'll give him like kind of a pinch to start the circle form. And one thing, if you've ever been to San Diego, there's part of it's called like Old Town. And I remember going as a kid with my mom, and you could just walk by the stores in Old Town, and it was, you know, they would be making homemade tortillas in the windows, and you could have them at the restaurant. It was one of those memories you just like, a core memory, because it was so cool when I was a kid. And it was some of the best food ever, going there. Flip that guy. And we've got our next one up. I'm going to give these a quick chop up because these are going to go in our corn salsa. Nice little chop. So corn salsa, if you've ever been to or had like chipotle, they have a lovely corn salsa there, and this is kind of just like the corn salsa you get there, and I love it. It's my favorite. We're just gonna dress it up with some green onions, cilantro, and a little bit of lime juice. Give this a toss. Perfect. Okay. Here is our corn. So this is frozen corn, like sweet corn, and I just like warmed it up in the microwave. It's still cold, just enough to prevent it from being frozen. You could also leave it out in a bowl on the counter if you want it. We're gonna add in part of our chopped up peppers to our sweet corn, and then I have some green onions here that we're going to be using. I'm gonna cut off the very ends of them because sometimes they get a little dried out. Give this guy a flip. A little stir. And I'm going to turn off my peppers because they're right where I want them. And we're going to give this a really kind of fine mince of them using the bright green parts of it. I'm going to go down, but I'm not going to add the super bright white parts into my corn salsa, because those are the really strong oniony parts, and I want more of the mild onion. So we're going to throw this into our corn salsa as well. Let me roll out our next tortilla. Do a little bit of flour here. Kind of give it a pinch to start with. And again, for those who've joined us late, these are our homemade tortilla dough using sourdough discard. We made the dough earlier at lunchtime today, and we just let it sit out on our counter until we were ready to roll it out. Got a little bit of cilantro on here. Pull that guy off. Perfect. And I'm going to get this. There's a pepper. So we've got our little thing. Now in our corn salsas, we have corn, chopped up red peppers, some green onions, and now we're going to add juice from a lime. So I'm gonna cut my lime and give it some good squeezes in here. This lime juice just really works well with the corn salsa. Lime juice works so well with Mexican food. It's not as sweet as a lemon, and it gives, I think, it's just a little bit brighter flavor. So we've got, there we go, I think a little bit more. We're gonna squeeze it in. You always wanna use fresh lime juice. You don't wanna use that like true lime. That stuff tastes like chemicals and it just doesn't add the right flavor. So we've got our lime juice in there. And then we're gonna give it a dash of garlic salt. And then I'm gonna give it a quick stir and our corn salsa will be done. And this is just, it's a great alternative to a regular tomato salsa, but it has so much flavor. My 1-year-old loves corn salsa. Here we go. So we've got our corn salsa made. Let me check out this. About a minute. Let's get our next tortilla rolled out. Now I think I'm making 16 tortillas. I doubled the recipe because we do have a large family. So I have 5 kids. So 16 tortillas will feed us, but you can definitely have the recipe and just do 8 if you are a smaller family. And perfect. Okay. And I'm cooking these just on my skillet. This is a hex-clad skillet. I absolutely love it. I use it for making my grilled cheeses too because I love the flat where you can just get underneath it, or I can just slide it off and flip it there. I did turn off my vegetables for our carnitas. So this is our sauteed onions and peppers that we'll be serving with our carnitas. These are our sourdough tortillas here. And then for those of you who haven't checked in, this is our nice carnita meat sitting in the stewed flavors. We used a pork butt roast, and then I had a couple pork chops, bone-in pork chops with the rib meat that I wasn't gonna use, so we tossed those in because we don't want things to go to waste here, and it will, when anything's slow cooked or pressure, they get nice and tender. So let's roll this out and then we'll make our guac. And then dinner should be just about ready. Look at this. Almost got a good circle here, guys. Again, it's not about the beauty, it's about the taste. And these are just the best homemade tortillas. Like, they're nice and malleable and so, they're just so good. And they're really, of course it's more work than opening up a packet and taking out a tortilla, but they just taste so much better than anything you can get from the store. Okay, let's get our guac going. Oh, before we do that, I want to throw in some cilantro in our corn salsa. Forgot that. I had just a little bit of cilantro left. So, fresh cilantro. If you don't have fresh cilantro, don't add dried cilantro, which goes by the name coriander. Has a completely different flavor profile. So that is not a time where you can substitute dried for fresh. So here's our fresh cilantro, and we're gonna mix that into our corn salsa as well. And I'm gonna give this a nice stir. That's corn, sweet peppers, green onions, and lime juice and garlic salt. If you like things spicy, you could throw in either a poblano or a jalapeno pepper, but I'm a wuss for spice, so I just stick with the nice sweet peppers. Beautiful. Got a few more tortillas to roll out, and then we'll start shredding our meat. I'm just letting our our pork just sit in the juices to keep the flavor, and then we'll pull them out. For that, I just put in my Insta pot. I had like a small pork butt roast. It was half of one that was left over, and 3 good-sized pork chops. and with the bone will give the extra flavor, but I just put in about a half a cup of salsa that we needed to use up with some smoked chipotle paste and 1.5 cups of broth, 2 bay leaves, some Mexican fiesta seasoning, and some smoked, some like liquid smoke, and a little bit of Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire, that's just a little bit of acidity to make the pork really tender as well. And I did that in my Instapot on the high pressure thing for, it was about 2.5 hours on high. You don't want to do the low. The low takes forever. It just makes it nice and tender and so flavorful. You've got to, when you're cooking it on there, you really got to flavor your broth, like what you're cooking it in. Otherwise, if you try to add the flavor later, it won't give you that nice, like long, slow cooked flavor that really binds to the meat. Okay. Perfect. We'll get this on and we can start on that guac. I managed to find 2 avocados in my fridge, so I was winning on that. A lot of times, you know, people are like, oh, do you send out like a meal plan? And I said, I'm not one for meal planning. I go to the store and I see what I like, what looks good, and I get it, and then I you know, 50% of the time I cook that meal that I had in my head, and the other times I just grab a different meal and just go crazy and change things up. This one, a little past its prime, but still does the job. I find avocados, they have such a short window when they are good. They go bad so fast. There we go. This one is like on its last leg out, but still some good ones in there. We're gonna give this a generous squeeze of lime juice, because the lime juice is what's gonna keep your guacamole from going brown, and it's gonna give you that really bright flavor. Let's see, get my tortilla flipped real quick. Perfect. And let me cut a little bit more. You can't, I will say, lemon juice does just not work. You have to use fresh lime, and you're gonna just give a nice squirt in there. The more the better. Perfect. And then, my hand, I'm a little limey. We're gonna add some garlic salt. And I'm just doing a really basic guacamole. Now you can jazz it up at home with onions and tomatoes and peppers if you wanted, but this will just be perfect to go on our fajitas or carnitas. So super simple, but still gives you all that bright flavors. Perfect. Easy peasy. And this tortilla is done. Look at that. I'm gonna roll out these last 3, and then we'll start shredding that carnita meat, and dinner will be ready. Let's get this right out of the way. And there we go. So we've got 3 more tortillas left. This was, again, we made this with our sourdough discard. So it's just another great recipe to use when you're making the sourdough bread. That is very different from most discard recipes. You know, sometimes I feel like you can only have so many like biscuits or scones or muffins. But I always like, what are foods we eat a lot of that we can change out and use with our sourdough discard? And I said tortillas. We love Mexican food, and so it's just a great way to do it, and it tastes so much better than anything store-bought. There. And we'll roll this guy out. You could also use these to make like the best quesadillas ever. You know, you just kind of cook them up, then you'll add your cheeses and then warm them up again. Beautiful. So there's our next one. And it's like a conveyor belt. We'll get our last guy ready to roll. Now I couldn't imagine having to make like a huge amount of these. Like if I had to make like 100 of these, I would need a tortilla press. I keep thinking, I'm like, gotta get it. I think I might invest in one. They look so simple to use. The only problem is I hate buying kitchen gadgets that only have one use. You know what I mean? Especially if it's something that I can do myself. Like I can roll these out and that's not a big problem. Okay. We've got our corn salsa, our guacamole, and our tortillas. Let's go get our carnitas ready. Get a bowl. Pulling this stuff out while the rest cooks. So we've got it in here, and it should be so tender that it will just fall apart. Perfect. Look at that. It's just gonna fall apart as we pick it up, which is what we want. You want your meat to be nice and tender. That means the pressure cooker did its job. And pick it up. Try not to get. This looks so delicious. Oh, did I lose some out the back? No. Okay. Now, look at that. Beautiful. I'm going to get a fork and give it a little shred. And this is it's been seasoned, it's been soaking in there. And a little bit goes a long way. There we go. And it's so, you see how tender it is? That's, it was only in my Instapot for 2.5 hours, but it was on the high pressure thing. So it really makes it tender so quick versus a slow cooker where it has to be in there for several hours. And let's get our tortilla. Perfect. We've got 2 more tortillas. And then in just a second, I can start assembling what we'll be having for dinner. It smells so good. And if you want it to be like super fancy with your tortillas, you could dip your tortilla in that juice and then like kind of saute it up, kind of like a birria taco almost, because it has so much flavor in it. There we go. But let me get a plate out and I'm going to show you how we're going to fix it up for dinner tonight. So, I'll take one of the cooler ones right there. Let me get a nice big one. There we go. So we've got our beautiful things. I'm going to put in some of my onions, my sauteed onions and peppers.
Excuse me.
Got that. Let me get this guy flipped real quick. Once you see the bubbles, you know they're ready to flip. And then we're going to put in our shredded carnitas. So this is our, our pork and our seasoned well. We're going to just kind of fill it all out there. And then what I like to do is give it a nice serving of corn salsa. And we've got our guac over the top. And I add a little bit of Tillamook cheddar cheese. I love Tillamook, it's my favorite. And can't go wrong with a little bit of sour cream.
You got a question, corn or flour tortilla?
These are flour tortillas. We used our sourdough discard to make these, which is a flour base to it. And I'm a fan of flour tortillas over corn tortillas, but homemade corn tortillas are much better than the store ones. I feel like the store-bought tortillas here are so dry and fall apart, but if you do make them homemade, fresh, they are so much more tender. But today, these are just some flour tortillas using our sourdough discard. But this is our dinner tonight. We've got our fully loaded, and then we'll serve it with some pineapple on the side. But again, it was simple, easy, and these homemade tortillas are like an absolute, game changer. But you know what, guys? We are done, so thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We try to do live cooking shows every single day. And also don't forget to comment or message us if you have any cooking questions or if you want to see any recipes cooked. We love suggestions. Thanks again. Don't forget to like and subscribe.